Hello and welcome to Quiz Class. My name is Ellen and I will be your host today. Today we have 100 questions that the boomers will love. Let's begin. Which 1967 Swedish film pushed boundaries with its explicit content and political commentary? I am angry, I am open, or I am curious? I am curious. What was the first TV soap opera aired in 1947 on Dumont? Faraway Place, Faraway Hill, or Faraway Home? Faraway Hill. Which 1960s Alan Capro performance art pioneered audience participation and visual art integration? Dreamings, buildings, or happenings? Happenings. Which American journalist gained fame for his Blitz radio broadcasts from London in 1940? Ed Burrow, Ed Thorough, or Ed Murrow? Ed Murrow. Which form of visual reporting became essential during World War II? Photojournalism, citizen journalism, or print journalism? Photojournalism. Which 1949 trials saw Communist Party USA leaders charged with advocating U.S. government overthrow? The Smithson Act trials, the Smith Act trials, or the Smythe Act trials? The Smith Act trials. What did Alvar Aalto introduce to post-war buildings in A Break from Modernism? Red brick, stained glass windows, or natural materials? Natural materials. What did Harry S. Truman give the first of in 1947? Mention of the United Nations, recommendation for equal pay, or televised presidential address? Televised presidential address. What did Rosalind Franklin's X-ray diffraction images in the late 1940s help discover? DNA structure, fallopian tube structure, or spinal cord structure? DNA structure. What 1941 film was inspired by William Randolph Hearst, who tried to block its release? The Maltese Falcon, Citizen Kane, or Double Indemnity? Citizen Kane. Which vehicle became a symbol of World War II military mobility and transition to civilian use in 1945? Jeep, Fiat, or Triumph Roadster? Jeep. What adhesive was developed during World War II to seal ammunition cases before becoming a household staple? Liquid nails, blue tack, or duct tape? Duct tape. What did Marie Tharp create the first scientific map of in the 1940s? The Pacific Ocean floor, the Atlantic Ocean floor, or the Indian Ocean floor? The Atlantic Ocean floor. What 1944 US and New Zealand military experiment investigated using tsunami bombs? Project Seal, Project Whale, or Project Shark? Project Seal. Which technology made significant strides in the 40s, setting the stage for space exploration? Thermodynamics, rocket propulsion, or atomic power? Rocket propulsion. What 1942 film originally tested different endings before choosing the famous airport scene? Key Largo, Casablanca, or Treasure of Sierra Madre? Casablanca. What did biomedical research laws enacted in 1947 protect? The rights of children, laboratory animals, or radiation exposure? Laboratory animals. What mountain was first measured at 29,028 feet in 1947? Pancakajaya, Mount Kilimanjaro, or Mount Everest? Mount Everest. Who was named the Time Man of the Half Century in 1949? Winston Churchill, excuse me, Winston Churchill, J. Robert Oppenheimer, or Albert Einstein? Winston Churchill. Whose 1940 broadcast from London urged the French to resist Nazi occupation, launching the Free French movement? Winston Churchill, King George VI, or Charles de Gaulle? Charles de Gaulle. Where did the 1947 Centralia mine fire begin that continues to burn today? Where did it begin? New York, Massachusetts, or Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania. Which major Catholic Church council took place from 1962 to 1965, initiated by Pope John Paul XXIII? Second Vatican, Third Vatican, or Fourth Vatican Council? The Second Vatican Council. What 1950 book marked the beginning of Scientology? Dogmatics, Dianetics, or Deliverances? Dianetics. Which African country became the first to gain independence from Britain in 1957? Botswana, Ghana, or Kenya? Ghana. What symbol of post-war prosperity returned to store shelves in the early 1950s? Chocolate bars, nylon stockings, or home telephones? Nylon stockings. Question 26. Which horn-shaped corn snack was introduced by General Mills in 1954? Tubas, bugles, or French horns? Bugles. In what U.S. industry did the 1942 Bracero program allow temporary Mexican laborers to work? Munitions, agriculture, or automotive? Agriculture. What 1950s Smirnoff vodka campaign helped popularize vodka in the U.S.? It leaves you fearless, it leaves you joyous, or it leaves you breathless? It leaves you breathless. Which military force crucially helped defend French colonial interests in the First Indochina War? The French Foreign Legion, United Nations Peacekeeping, or the Australian Army? The French Foreign Legion. What 1954 operation tested hydrogen bombs in the Pacific, raising awareness of nuclear fallout dangers? Operation Crypt, Operation Castle, or Operation Carnival? Operation Castle. Which poet won the 1956 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry for North and South? Anne Sexton, Sylvia Plath, or Elizabeth Bishop? Elizabeth Bishop. Which body shape, popularized by Marilyn Monroe and Sophia Loren, drove 1950s fashion trends? Hourglass, pear, or triangle? Hourglass. What region did Swahili become a lingua franca of during the 1950s? East Africa, South Africa, or West Africa? East Africa. Which country didn't join NATO in 1952, expanding its presence in the Mediterranean region? Lebanon, Greece, or Turkey? Lebanon. What U.S. satellite intended to rival Sputnik failed its 1957 launch? Vanguard, Apollo, or Juno? Vanguard. Which lake, completed in 1959, became one of the largest man-made lakes in the world? Aspire Lake, Lake Omodeo, or Lake Kariba? Lake Kariba. What 1958 car model became one of the biggest commercial failures in automotive history? The Eagle, the Edsel, or the Eureka? The Edsel. Which 1954 to 1955 book series brought Norse, Anglo-Saxon, and Celtic mythologies to a wider audience? Dune, The Lord of the Rings, or The Chronicles of Narnia? The Lord of the Rings. What did Dwight D. Eisenhower warn of in his 1961 farewell speech? USSR atomic weapons, military-industrial complex, or communist unrest in Asia? Military-industrial complex. We are at question 40. Which actress became a star overnight with her role in the 1964 film Mary Poppins? Julie Andrews, Natalie Wood, or Barbra Streisand? Julie Andrews. Which potato chips were introduced in the 60s and marketed as better for dipping? Pringles, Ruffles, or Kettle? Ruffles. Which 1963 earthquake devastated North Macedonia's capital city? Skopje earthquake, Sofia earthquake, or Tirana earthquake? Skopje earthquake. What mythology was introduced to a new generation in the 1964 animated film Jason and the Argonauts? Norse, Greek, or Roman? Greek. Which 1961 novel introduced a new term into the general English lexicon? 1984, Catch-22, or Slaughterhouse-Five? Catch-22. What vessel was Yuri Gagarin aboard when he became the first human orbiting Earth in space in 1961? Vostok 1, Sputnik 1, or Salyut 1? Vostok 1. Which 1960s U.S. military special forces were legends of the Vietnam War? The Green Berets, the Red Berets, or the Brown Berets? The Green Berets. Which 1966 agreement formed the modern NFL and led to the first Super Bowl? AFL-NFL merger, USFL-NFL merger, or SL-NFL merger? The AFL and NFL merger. What language was first recognized as legitimate in the 1960s? Spanish, Esperanto, or American Sign Language? American Sign Language. Where was the Habitat 67 modular housing complex built in the 1960s? Vancouver, Toronto, or Montreal? Montreal. Question 50. What programs launched by Lyndon B. Johnson in the mid-60s aimed to eliminate poverty and racial injustice? Reparations programs, Great Society programs, or Free Cities programs? Great Society programs. Which magazine pushed boundaries in the 60s with provocative centerfolds and in-depth interviews? Cosmopolitan, Penthouse, or Playboy? Playboy. When was the Kevlar fabric developed at DuPont in 1965 first used commercially? 1960s, 1970s, or 1980s? The 1970s. Which pesticides' damaging effects were raised in the 1962 book Silent Spring? DEET, Murex, or DDT? DDT. Which religious group gained attention in the 1960s for their U.S. Supreme Court legal battles? Latter-day Saints, Jehovah's Witnesses, or Seventh-day Adventists? Jehovah's Witnesses. What did the 1960s op-art movement use? Still lives, medical imagery, or optical illusions? Optical illusions. Which meat snack saw sales surge in the 60s, becoming a convenience store staple? Jack Link's, Chomps, or Slim Jims? Slim Jims. Which car model became the best-selling car in history by the end of the 60s? Volkswagen Beetle, Ford Model T, or Cadillac Eldorado? Volkswagen Beetle. In which Californian park was the human being held in 1967? Sacramento, Los Angeles, or San Francisco? Golden Gate Park, San Francisco. Which poet gained critical acclaim in 1967 with The Lice, exploring themes of war and environmental destruction? W.S. Merwin, Robert Creeley, or James Wright? W.S. Merwin. Who didn't fight in the 1971 boxing match called the Fight of the Century? Joe Frazier, Sugar Ray Robinson, or Muhammad Ali? Muhammad Ali. What trend in the 70s reflected changing attitudes towards marriage and gender roles? Divorce rates, birth rates, or marriage rates? Divorce rates. What dress style did Diane von Furstenberg introduce in 1974? Shift, wrap, or t-shirt? Wrap. In which decade was the mobile invented and then commercially available? 1960s and 1980s, 1970s and 1980s, or 1980s or in the 1980s? 1970s and 1980s. What scientific theory, widely accepted in the 70s, unified ideas about earthquakes and continental drift? Seismology, plate tectonics, or oceanography? Plate tectonics. Which towns were threatened when Mount Etna erupted in 1971 and spewed lava for 6 months? Calabrian towns, Campanian towns, or Sicilian towns? Sicilian towns. Which language family, including Finnish and Hungarian, saw increased academic interest in the 70s? Dravidian languages, Caucasian languages, or Uralic languages? Uralic languages. Which life-saving maneuver was introduced in 1974 by Dr. Henry what? The Heinrich maneuver, Hemlock maneuver, or Heimlich maneuver? The Heimlich maneuver. Which Jacques Cousteau marine life explorations were presented in the 1964 film The Silent what? World, deep, or water? World. What sailing record did Sir Francis Chichester achieve in the period of 1966 to 1967? First person to sail solo around the world via the Clipper route. Question 70. Which art movement gained momentum in the 70s, with artists like Judy Chicago creating large-scale installations? Indigenous art movement, secular art movement, or feminist art movement? Feminist art movement. Which large-scale conservation project, launched in 1973, focused on protecting the endangered Bengal tiger? Project Bengal, Project Wildlife, or Project Tiger? Project Tiger. Which tower in Toronto became the world's tallest freestanding structure in 1976? The CN Tower, CTN Tower, or TN Tower? The CN Tower. Which protected area, established in 1975, became one of the largest conservation efforts for marine biodiversity? Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. Which American car was not a 1970s icon? The Chevrolet Camaro, the DMC DeLorean, or the Pontiac Firebird? The DMC DeLorean. What did the controversial 1968 encyclical Humanae Vitae reaffirm the Catholic Church's position regarding divorce, artificial birth control, or intercourse before marriage? Artificial birth control. Which 1970 space mission suffered a catastrophic failure but resulted in the safe return of its astronauts? Apollo 12, Apollo 13, or Apollo 14? Apollo 13. What 1979 Soviet action sparked a decade-long conflict and became a central Cold War battleground? Weapons provision to North Vietnam, USSR sleeper spies in London, or Soviet invasion of Afghanistan? And the last one is the answer: Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Which candy, introduced in 1978, gained popularity after being featured in E.T.? Reese's Pieces, Hershey's Kisses, or Babe Ruth? Reese's Pieces. Which 1970 music festival featured Jimi Hendrix and was one of the last of the counterculture era? Camden Arts Festival, Tea in the Park, or Isle of Wight Festival? And the answer is Isle of Wight Festival. Question 80. Which Paris landmark, designed by Renzo Piano and Richard Rogers, opened in 1977 with an inside-out design? Centre Pompidou. Which Pacific nation gained independence from Australia in 1975? New Zealand, Indonesia, or Papua New Guinea? Papua New Guinea. Which perfume, launched in 1985, became iconic for its provocative advertising and bold scent? Chanel Coco, Calvin Klein Obsession, or Dior Poison? Calvin Klein Obsession. What environmental discovery in 1985 led to the 1987 Montreal Protocol to phase out zone-depleting chemicals? Global warming, iceberg melt, or ozone layer hole? Ozone layer hole. Where did Apple introduce its 1984 Macintosh computer? Times Square Billboard, 1984 Academy Awards, or 1984 Super Bowl Special? (1984) Super Bowl commercial. Which king played a key role in Spain's transition to democracy in the late 70s and 80s following Francisco Franco's death? King Juan Carlos I, the second, or the third? King Juan Carlos I. Who wrote the 1981 Booker Prize-winning novel Midnight's Children? Salman Rushdie, Vikram Seth, or Arundhati Roy? Salman Rushdie. Which polar explorer led the first confirmed expedition to reach the North Pole without resupply in 1986? Will Steger, Ranulph Fiennes, or Robert Swan? Will Steger. Where were the Petronas Towers conceived and building happened throughout the 1980s and 90s? Singapore, Malaysia, or Thailand? Malaysia. What U.S. military operation in 1989 aimed to overthrow Panamanian leader Manuel Noriega? Operation Just Cause, Operation Just Do It, or Operation Justice? Operation Just Cause. And we are at question 90. Which country's player scored the infamous Hand of God goal in the 1986 FIFA World Cup quarterfinals? Brazil, Spain, or Argentina? Argentina. What 1980s fashion trend popularized by breakdancing culture featured flexible and durable nylon pants? Parachute pants, acid wash pants, or bike pants? Parachute pants. Which 1988 PBS series brought Joseph Campbell's ideas about myth and heroism to a wider audience? The Days of Myth, Power of Myth, or The Journey of Myth? The Power of Myth. What was the 1979 to 1989 Soviet-Afghan War known as? The Soviet Union's Reckoning, the Soviet Union's Fall, or the Soviet Union's Vietnam? The Soviet Union's Vietnam. Which Detroit landmark built in the 70s became a symbol of urban revitalization in the 1980s? The Fisher Building, Hart Plaza, or Renaissance Center? Renaissance Center. What type of savory snack were the 1980s combos? Pretzels, bagels, or potato chips? Pretzels. Whose 1987 album, The Joshua Tree, earned them their first 2 Grammy Awards? U2, Pearl Jam, or Bon Jovi? U2. What wine cooler, introduced in 1981, became one of the best-selling alcoholic beverages of the decade? California Cooler, Seagram's, or Bartles and James? Bartles and James. Where was the 1980s initiative aimed to revitalize the Maori language? Tahiti, New Zealand, or Hawaii? New Zealand. Which film won the Palme d'Or at the 1989 Cannes Film Festival, redefining independent cinema? Sex, Lies, and Videotape, Drugstore Cowboy, or Blue Velvet? Sex, Lies, and Videotape. And for question 100, which planet did Voyager 2 not fly by? Planet did Voyager 2 not fly by between 1986 and 1989? Pluto, Neptune, or Uranus? And the answer is Pluto. And our bonus question, what type of fitness video was made by Jane Fonda in the 1980s? Let us know the answer in the comments. Thanks for playing this quiz. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.